The elegant dinner party at our home was Amanda's idea to impress her new executive colleagues. I stood awkwardly in my best suit, trying to fit in with their corporate banter while refilling drinks. My joke about our honeymoon fell flat, and suddenly I felt cold liquid splashing across my face. The room went silent as red wine dripped down my shirt. My wife Amanda stared at me with cold eyes. "Why are you always acting like such an idiot?" she asked with a laugh that did not reach her eyes. Before sharing the rest of this story, let me know where you are watching from today, and hit that subscribe button if you want more real-life stories. I met Amanda 6 years ago at Northwestern University. She was studying business with dreams of conquering the corporate world, while I was completing my degree in software engineering. We connected at a mutual friends party, and despite our different backgrounds, we hit it off immediately. I was drawn to her ambition and intelligence, and she seemed to appreciate my more laid-back approach to life. After graduation, we both landed decent jobs in Chicago and decided to build our life together. Fast forward to the present. At 35, I had established myself as a competent software developer at a mid-sized tech company. The work was fulfilling. My colleagues were great, and while I was not making millions, my salary was comfortable enough to support a good lifestyle. Amanda, now 34, had recently climbed another rung on her corporate ladder, securing an executive position at one of the most prestigious marketing firms in the city. This promotion had changed something in our relationship. What started as understandable excitement about her career advancement had gradually morphed into a subtle shift in how she viewed both of us. Our suburban Chicago home, which we had lovingly decorated together when we first moved in, underwent a complete transformation. Amanda hired an interior designer to create a space that would, in her words, match our new status. I hardly recognized our living room anymore, with its uncomfortable modern furniture and abstract art pieces that meant nothing to me. The distance between us had been growing for months. Our conversations revolved around her networking events, her new executive friends, and her strategies for further advancement. When I tried to talk about my projects or interests, her eyes would glaze over, or worse, she would check her phone. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that she needed time to adjust to her new role, and that things would eventually return to normal. I did everything I could to support her career. I took on more household responsibilities so she could work late. I attended boring corporate functions and made small talk with people who barely acknowledged my existence. I listened to her work stories and offered advice when asked, but nothing seemed to bridge the growing gap between us. The dinner party that fateful night was another of Amanda's ideas. She wanted to host her boss Franklin and colleagues Jessica and Dwayne, along with our longtime friends Laura and Thomas, who she had recently begun seeing as useful networking connections rather than actual friends. Laura worked in public relations, and Thomas was an attorney, both professions that Amanda now deemed worthy of maintaining relationships with. The day of the dinner party, Amanda was in rare form. She micromanaged every aspect of the preparation, from the exact temperature of the white wine to the precise angle of the forks on the dinner table. Nothing I did met her standards. "The napkins need to be folded this way," she demonstrated for the third time. "And make sure you use the right glasses for each wine. Franklin is something of a wine connoisseur." "I know which glasses are for which wine, Amanda," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "We have been over this already." She gave me a look that suggested she did not believe me. "And please, for the love of God, try to keep your stories short and relevant tonight. No one needs to hear about your coding problems or that weird podcast you have been obsessed with lately." I bit my tongue and nodded. This was not the time to start an argument, not with guests arriving in less than an hour. By 7:30, our dining room was filled with the sounds of conversation and clinking glasses. Amanda was in her element, gracefully moving between guests, topping off drinks, and leading discussions on everything from market trends to the latest exhibit at the Art Institute. I tried my best to fit in, but it was clear I was not part of Amanda's carefully curated social circle. Early in the dinner, I noticed a pattern. Whenever I began to share a story or opinion, Amanda would subtly cut me off or correct me. If I mentioned a news item, she would jump in with "what Sergio means is," followed by her own interpretation. If I shared a memory, she would interject with, That is not exactly how it happened before taking over the narrative. After the third interruption, I caught Laura giving me a sympathetic glance across the table. She and Thomas had known us since before Amanda's promotion and had witnessed the gradual transformation of our relationship. Thomas tried to include me in the conversation, occasionally asking about my work or mutual interests. But Amanda expertly steered the discussion back to topics that showcased her knowledge and connections. By the time dessert was served, I had resigned myself to the role of silent server, refilling wine glasses and clearing plates. The conversation had turned to travel, and Franklin was describing his recent vacation to the Amalfi Coast. "Amanda, you and Sergio should consider Italy for your next trip," he suggested. "The food alone is worth the journey." Amanda laughed politely. "Oh, we would love to, but getting Sergio on a plane is like pulling teeth. He gets terribly anxious about flying." This was not true. I had never had issues with flying, and we had taken several international trips together without incident. Before I could correct her, she continued, "On our honeymoon to Hawaii, he was so nervous. He took 2 sleeping pills and slept through our entire first day there." The truth was that I had taken a single over-the-counter sleep aid on the overnight flight, as had Amanda, and we had both been refreshed and ready to explore upon arrival. I was confused by this fabrication but decided to play along with a light-hearted correction. "That is not exactly how I remember it," I said, with a smile, reaching for the wine bottle to refill Jessica's glass. "I think we were both pretty tired after the wedding and the long flight, but we still managed to catch a beautiful sunset on our first day. Remember that little seafood restaurant on the beach, the one where they had that fire dancer who almost set his hair on fire?" I was hoping to pivot to a funny story we had both enjoyed telling in the past, but I noticed Amanda's expression darkening. The atmosphere around the table shifted imperceptibly, like the air pressure changing before a storm. "God, Sergio, why do you always have to contradict me?" Amanda said, her voice still light, but with an unmistakable edge. "And that is not even how it happened. The fire dancer was at the luau on our third night. I am pretty sure it was the first night," I said, confused by her hostility over such an inconsequential detail. "We have that picture of us with the sunset and the dancer in the background." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Amanda's face flushed, her lips pressed into a thin line, and without warning, she picked up her nearly full glass of red wine and threw its contents directly in my face. The cold liquid hit me like a slap, soaking my face hair and dripping down onto my light blue dress shirt and gray suit jacket. The conversation around the table died instantly. In the silence, I could hear individual drops of wine hitting the hardwood floor. "Why are you always acting like such an idiot?" Amanda asked with a forced laugh that did not reach her eyes, as if trying to frame the assault as a playful joke between spouses. "He always has to be right about everything," she explained to the stunned table. I felt the ground sink beneath me. The humiliation was total, but somehow I maintained my composure. Without a word, I placed the wine bottle on the table, carefully dabbed my face with my napkin, and excused myself from the table. As I walked away, I heard Amanda say, "He is so dramatic sometimes," followed by a half-hearted attempt at redirecting the conversation. Upstairs in our bedroom, I peeled off the wine-soaked clothes and changed into clean ones. My hands were shaking, but not from anger. It was a strange, hollow feeling, as if I was finally seeing through a fog that had been surrounding me for years. This was not just about a glass of wine or a contradicted story. This was about respect, or rather the complete lack of it. Instead of returning to the dinner party, I grabbed my keys, wallet, and phone, then slipped out through the garage. As I backed my car out of the driveway, I noticed Laura standing at the dining room window, watching me go with concern in her eyes. I drove aimlessly through the Chicago streets, the city lights blurring as my mind raced. The wine incident kept replaying in my head, but now it was connecting to dozens of other moments over the past few years that I had conveniently ignored or excused. There was the company picnic 2 years ago when Amanda had corrected my pronunciation of a colleague's name in front of everyone, adding, "Sometimes I wonder if he even listens when I talk." There were the subtle criticisms of my wardrobe choices, leading to her gradually replacing my clothes without consulting me. There were the dismissive comments about my friends, until I saw them less and less, and the constant suggestions that I should pursue a more prestigious position, regardless of my own professional satisfaction. I pulled into an empty parking lot and checked my phone. 6 missed calls and 12 text messages from Amanda Nunn, expressing concern for my well-being, all focused on how I had embarrassed her by leaving. "How dare you walk out on my dinner party? Get back here now. You are making me look bad." Franklin asked where you went. "Stop being childish and come home. We will discuss your behavior later." Each message reinforced what I was finally allowing myself to see. There was also a separate text from Laura. "Are you okay?" That was completely out of line. "I am here if you need to talk. Coffee tomorrow." I sent her a brief reply thanking her for her concern and agreeing to coffee, then continued driving until I found myself at an all-night diner. Sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee, I pulled out a napkin and started making a list of concerning behaviors I had been tolerating. The list grew quickly, filling both sides of the napkin. At midnight, I called my brother Anthony. "Sergio, everything okay?" "It is pretty late." His voice was groggy with sleep. "Not really," I admitted, and proceeded to tell him about the dinner party disaster. Anthony listened without interruption, then sighed heavily. "Man, I wish I could say I am surprised, but honestly, this has been coming for a long time. We have all seen how she treats you." "What do you mean, all?" I asked, surprised. "Me, Mom, your friends. Amanda has been putting you down in public for years, but it has definitely gotten worse lately. Remember Thanksgiving when she spent 20 minutes explaining to everyone how you would have been lost without her managing your finances, even though you were the one who set up your retirement accounts and investment portfolio? I did. Remember, but I had written it off as holiday stress, making Amanda act out of character. Now, I was starting to see it as part of a pattern. "Can I crash at your place tonight?" I asked. "I need some space to think." "Of course. I will make up the spare room." When I arrived at Anthony's apartment, he was waiting with a beer and a level of compassion I was not prepared for. We stayed up late with him, helping me process what was happening in my marriage. He pointed out instances of Amanda's controlling behavior that I had normalized, and for the first time I used the words emotional abuse to describe what I had been experiencing. "What are you going to do?" Anthony asked, as our conversation wound down around 2 in the morning. "I need to confront her," I said. "Not to change her, but to stand up for myself. I also need to protect myself financially. She recently insisted on managing all our accounts, even though I have always handled that side of things." "Use my computer," Anthony offered. "Get everything documented tonight." I spent the next 2 hours accessing our online accounts and documenting the state of our finances. What I discovered was worse than I had imagined. Over the past 3 months, Amanda had been systematically moving money from our joint savings to an account in her name only. Nearly $40,000, almost half of our emergency fund, had been siphoned away in small increments. I took screenshots of all the transactions, downloaded statements, and emailed them to myself. Then I prepared a list of talking points for what would undoubtedly be a difficult conversation. I was determined to remain calm and factual, focusing on the behavior rather than throwing accusations. By the time I finally went to bed in Anthony's spare room, I had a plan. The next morning I returned home around 10, knowing Amanda would likely still be there. She had mentioned plans for brunch with Jessica at noon, which gave me a clear time frame to work with. When I walked in, the house was immaculate. No evidence of the previous night's dinner party remained. I found Amanda in our bedroom, applying makeup at her vanity. She ignored me at first, deliberately focusing on her mascara application, as if I was not there. When that failed to elicit an apology from me, she switched tactics. "Finally decided to come home, I see," she said, her tone suggesting I was the one who had behaved inappropriately. "We need to talk about what happened last night," I said calmly. "What is there to talk about? You embarrassed me in front of my boss, contradicted me, and then stormed off like a child. If anyone deserves an apology, it is me." She turned back to the mirror, clearly considering the matter closed. "You threw a glass of wine in my face, Amanda, in front of our friends and your colleagues. Then you called me an idiot. That is not acceptable." She spun around, exasperation written on her face. "It was a joke, Sergio." "God, When did you become so sensitive? Besides, you were being particularly difficult last night. What about that time you snapped at me in front of my parents last Christmas? Should we talk about that? I recognized the deflection tactic, one she had used successfully many times before. Bring up an unrelated incident from the past to shift focus away from her behavior. Not this time. We can discuss other incidents later if you want, but right now, we are talking about last night and about a pattern of behavior that has become unbearable. Pattern. What pattern? Her voice had a dangerous edge now. You are being ridiculous. Instead of backing down as I normally would, I sat down on the edge of the bed and maintained eye contact. The pattern of public humiliation, Amanda. The constant corrections, the dismissive comments, the criticism. And now I have discovered something else we need to discuss. I opened my laptop and turned it toward her, showing the financial records I had compiled. Would you like to explain why you have been moving money from our joint savings to a private account? The color drained from her face, replaced quickly by anger. You have been spying on me, going through our accounts behind my back. They are our accounts, Amanda. I have every right to know what is happening with our money. You have moved $40,000 without discussing it with me. Where is it going? I earned that money, she said defensively. With my promotion and bonus, I have been contributing much more to our household than you have lately. I deserve to have some financial independence. That is not how marriage works, and you know it. We have always pooled our resources and made financial decisions together. If you wanted to change that arrangement, you should have discussed it with me. Her eyes narrowed. What exactly are you implying? I am not implying anything. I am stating facts. You have been secretly moving joint assets which legally belong to both of us into an account only you can access. I have already spoken with our financial advisor and consulted with a lawyer about this situation. That was not entirely true. I had sent emails to both, but had not yet received responses. However, the bluff had its intended effect. Amanda's expression shifted from indignation to concern. A lawyer? Why would you involve a lawyer? This is between us. Because what you are doing could be considered financial misconduct in a divorce proceeding, especially since you have been doing it secretly. It could also potentially impact your professional reputation if it came to light. Amanda's makeup was now completely forgotten as she processed the implications. She was always intensely concerned about her professional image. You would not dare, she said, but there was uncertainty in her voice. I do not want to, I said truthfully. But I will not continue to be disrespected and financially undermined. I have some new boundaries, Amanda. Either we discuss them rationally, or I will take steps to protect myself. For the first time in our conversation, Amanda seemed to realize she was not in control. She sat down at her vanity, her body language shifting to something less confrontational. What boundaries? She asked cautiously. First, I am moving out temporarily. I will be staying with Anthony while we decide what comes next. Second, I want us to see a marriage counselor, if there is any hope of salvaging our relationship. Third, I am separating our finances effective immediately. I have already changed my direct deposit information at work and opened a new individual account. Amanda's eyes widened at this last point. You did what I am also aware that you changed the passwords to our joint investment accounts last month. I have already reset those and implemented two-factor authentication linked to my phone. You cannot just make these decisions unilaterally, she protested. That is exactly what you have been doing, I pointed out. The difference is I am telling you to your face instead of going behind your back. This is about last night, is not it? You are overreacting to one little incident. This is about years of disrespect culminating in last night's humiliation. And just so you know, I have already moved my important documents and some personal items to Anthony's. I have also forwarded evidence of your financial activities to our family attorney, with instructions to hold unless you agree to fair separation terms. This last part was another bluff, but an effective one. Amanda's expression shifted from defensive to panicked as she realized how thoroughly I had prepared. You planned all this overnight. This seems very calculated for someone who claims to be the victim. I have had years to think about this, Amanda. I just never had the courage to act until you threw that wine in my face and called me an idiot in front of everyone we know." She stood up and began pacing, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. "What exactly do you want from me? Right now, honesty. Why have you been moving our money? What was the purpose?" After a long pause, she admitted, "I have been looking at investment properties on my own. I wanted to surprise you with a vacation home announcement at Christmas." I almost laughed at the transparency of the lie. Properties that only have your name on them, that I would not have legal access to. Her smile quickly disappeared when she realized I was not going to accept her explanation. "Fine. I wanted my own safety net. All the financial experts recommend women have their own money. Then you should have told me that. We could have formally divided some of our assets or created a post-nuptial agreement. Instead, you chose deception." The reality of her situation was finally sinking in. Amanda was used to manipulating conversations to her advantage, but she was now facing someone who had done his homework and was no longer susceptible to her usual tactics. "I need time to think about all this," she said finally. "Take all the time you need. I will be at Anthony's when you are ready to have a real conversation." As I stood to leave, Amanda made one final attempt to regain control. "If you walk out that door, you will regret it, Sergio. No one throws away 6 years of marriage over one bad night." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the woman I had fallen in love with, but someone I no longer recognized. This was not one bad night, Amanda. This was the night I finally decided to value myself more than I value your approval. With that, I walked out, leaving her standing speechless in our bedroom. As I drove away, I felt something I had not experienced in years: freedom. The first month of separation was the hardest. Amanda cycled through various strategies to regain control. First came the angry texts and voicemails accusing me of betrayal and overreaction. When those failed to elicit a response beyond brief factual replies about practical matters, she switched to tearful phone calls about how much she missed me and how she was willing to change. I maintained my boundaries, communicating only through email and only about necessary subjects like bill payments and household maintenance. I found an excellent therapist who helped me recognize the patterns of emotional abuse I had endured for years. Each session revealed another layer of manipulation that I had normalized in our relationship. By the second month, I had established a comfortable routine in my new apartment. It was smaller than our house, but closer to my office, cutting my commute in half. I had furnished it simply with a mix of new items and a few treasured possessions from the house that were undeniably mine. The space reflected my personality in a way our home had not for years. Laura and Thomas invited me to lunch one Saturday, a gesture that meant more than they could know. Over sandwiches at our favorite deli, they finally shared what they had observed over the years. "We saw things changing between you two," Laura admitted. "The way Amanda would cut you off or make those little digs at you in public. But we did not know how to bring it up without seeming like we were interfering. I wish you had said something," I told them. "But I understand why you did not. I probably would not have been ready to hear it anyway." Thomas nodded. "That is often how it works with these situations. The person has to come to their own realization. For what it is worth, we think you are doing the right thing by standing up for yourself." Their support reinforced my resolve to maintain the boundaries I had established. When Amanda finally realized that her emotional appeals were not working, her messages took on a more regretful tone. She claimed to be seeing a therapist herself and recognizing her own toxic behaviors. "I never meant to hurt you," she wrote in one email. "I was so focused on my career and external validation that I lost sight of what really mattered. Please give me another chance to make things right." My therapist helped me see this for what it was: another manipulation tactic. The timing was too convenient, coming right after she had learned from our mortgage lender that I was not planning to continue making payments on the house we had shared. Without my income contribution, she would either need to sell the house or significantly adjust her lifestyle. At work, I was thriving in ways I had not expected. Without Amanda's constant criticism draining my confidence, I found myself speaking up more in meetings and proposing innovative solutions to problems. 3 months after moving out, I was offered a promotion to lead developer on a new project with a substantial salary increase. When I shared this news with my brother during our weekly dinner, he raised his beer in a toast. to freedom, and finding your voice again, he said. I still cannot believe I stayed in that situation for so long, I admitted. Looking back, the red flags were so obvious. Do not beat yourself up about it, Anthony advised. These things happen gradually. It is like the frog in boiling water. If you drop a frog into boiling water, it jumps out immediately. But if you put it in cool water and slowly increase the temperature, it does not notice until it is too late. His analogy was uncomfortably accurate. Amanda's controlling behavior had escalated so gradually that each new level of disrespect seemed like only a small increment from what I had already accepted as normal. 4 months after the wine incident, Amanda and I met with our respective attorneys to discuss the division of assets. I had expected her to fight tooth and nail over every detail, but she appeared subdued, even resigned. Her normally immaculate appearance showed subtle signs of strain with dark circles under her eyes, partially concealed by makeup. I never wanted it to come to this, she said, when our attorney stepped out to discuss a document. Neither did I replied honestly. But sometimes the end of something broken makes room for something whole. She studied me with an unreadable expression. You have changed. I have remembered who I am. I corrected her. The final paperwork for our divorce would take several more months to process, but the major decisions had been made. Amanda would keep the house, but buy out my portion of the equity. Our other assets would be divided equitably, including the funds she had moved to her private account, which she had reluctantly returned to our joint holdings, after my attorney made it clear that hiding marital assets would not be viewed favorably by the court. As life settled into new patterns, I gradually reconnected with old friends that Amanda had subtly pushed out of our lives. I rediscovered hobbies I had abandoned and explored new interests without fear of criticism. When I felt ready, I cautiously began dating again, approaching each new connection with a clearer understanding of healthy relationship dynamics. 6 months after leaving, I ran into Amanda at a restaurant downtown. She was dining with colleagues, holding court at the center of the table, just as she always had. Our eyes met briefly across the room, and I was surprised to feel nothing but a mild curiosity about her life. The power she had once held over me had completely dissipated. She texted me later that night. You looked good. I hope you are happy. I considered not responding, but decided on simple honesty. I am. I hope you find what you are looking for too. That brief exchange provided a kind of closure I had not realized I needed. The anger and hurt had faded, replaced by a calm certainty that I had made the right choice in walking away. My therapist described this as radical acceptance of both what had happened and what could never be. Amanda would likely never truly understand or acknowledge the depth of her behavior, but that was no longer my problem to solve. My responsibility was to myself and the life I was rebuilding. Looking back now, almost a year after that fateful dinner party, I can see how that glass of wine to the face was actually a gift. It was the shock I needed to wake up from the slow erosion of my self-worth. Sometimes the most painful moments become catalysts for the most necessary changes. I have learned that respect is not something you should have to earn repeatedly in a relationship. It should be the foundation, not a reward for good behavior. I have learned that love without respect is not really love at all, but a hollow imitation that eventually collapses under its own contradictions. Most importantly, I have learned that walking away from someone who diminishes you is not giving up. It is standing up for your fundamental right to be treated with dignity. No one deserves to be humiliated, controlled, or manipulated by someone who claims to love them. My new life is not perfect. I still have moments of doubt and days when loneliness creeps in, but these challenges are far preferable to the constant walking on eggshells and second-guessing myself that had become my normal. I would rather face the occasional emptiness of solitude than the persistent emptiness of being with someone who cannot see my value. If you are watching this and something in my story resonates with you, please know that you deserve better than to be treated as less than you are. The first step is the hardest, but on the other side of that difficult choice is a life where you can breathe freely again. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to stand up for yourself in a relationship? What helped you find the courage to make that change? Share your experiences in the comments below.